Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about the new movie, Haunted Mansion. I used to watch the original one with Eddie Murphy in it all the time growing up, so I was excited to go see this one. The synopsis is as follows. A woman and her son enlist a motley crew of so-called spiritual experts to help rid their home of supernatural squatters. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. Gabby and her son Travis move into this new giant house where they're very quickly met by ghosts and spirits that after driving them out of the house say, "You'll be back." As it turns out, if you enter this house, you are now haunted by the ghosts that are inside there, even outside of the house. When they realize that, they come back to try to figure it out and enlist the help of Ben Mathias. Ben has created a camera lens that allows him to take pictures of ghosts and see them. And after enlisting the help of several other eccentric characters, they try to solve the mystery behind why this mansion is haunted, so that they can all leave and live their lives without being haunted by these ghosts. That plot sounds simple enough, right? Unfortunately, the way it played out was extremely disorienting and discombobulated, with certain details missing, like how ghosts haunt people sometimes when they're outside of the mansion, but in other situations they're not doing things that are crazy. In addition to that, there was quite a few things that made this plot feel bloated and way longer than it needed to be, and the result was a story that was pretty underwhelming. So for me, plot gets a thumbs down. 2 is family friendliness. Haunted Mansion is rated PG-13. There's some minimal profanity, some physical comedy and violence, a couple creepy moments, but a lot of situations that involve ghosts, astral projecting, seances, and more. And while I never felt like this movie pushed the boundary on anything, the source material there is spiritual content that, while explored at a pretty basic entry level, is not stuff that everyone necessarily wants their kids getting into or watching. All that to say, for me, family friendliness gets a 50-50. 3 is acting and script. While this movie had a lot of familiar faces in it, I wasn't really impressed by any of the acting performances. If I had to pick a clear standout, it would be Lakeith Stanfield, but because of the way this movie was structured and the way the story was told, I honestly felt like he took a backseat to a lot of the stuff that was going on. Owen Wilson had some decent moments, but a lot of them were hit or miss. But every other performance in this movie was extremely bland. And that leads me to the script. This movie is supposed to be funny, and I don't know if it was just because I was a kid, but the original Haunted Mansion, to me, was very funny. But this movie was not funny. I was in a pretty well-attended showing, and I think collectively we all laughed twice. But most of the jokes or the one-liners or the moments that were designed to be funny just fell flat on their face. Even if you have the lens applied that you have to dumb down your humor or it's for kids, it's still not funny. In addition to that, a detail I noticed is that there's a lot of background dialogue that goes on that you can pretty clearly hear, and it's just nonsense. It's empty dialogue in the background. There's a lot of things I could talk about in this area, but the gist of it is that the script of this movie was actually terrible. I think in the hands of a decent director, this movie could have done a lot better, but in my opinion, I don't think it had that. So despite the star power, their presence alone was not enough to save this film. So for me, acting and the script get a thumbs down. 4 is character development. The only character in this movie that gets any development is Ben. And the character development that you get with him is through a series of flashbacks and very short conversations that he has that lets the viewer into what happened in his life. And those moments are the gold parts that this movie has. I probably have to attribute it most to Lakeith Stanfield's acting, but the scenes where you experience his character development and the moments that he's going through, it draws you right into that emotional place like that. It only happens like 2 or 3 times in this movie, but it was the best part about this movie, the most effective part. But those moments were tragically undercut by terrible jokes or violently cut away from by going to a different scene or something that was supposed to be scary or funny but wasn't. Almost all the other characters in this movie are simply defined by what they do in life, and for a lot of them that's pretty fraudulent as well, so you never really feel like you know any of these characters, including Gabby and Travis. They try to shoehorn in some character development at the end when it comes to Travis, but it was far too late in the film to start doing that. So with Ben being the exception, for me character development gets a thumbs down. 5 is visuals and CGI. The CGI in this movie was fine. Some of it was more uncanny valley than others, but I remember the original being kind of like that as well. And there were actually several moments in this movie where I thought the CGI was actually pretty good. There were a lot of things wrong with this movie, but visuals and CGI were not one of them. So for me, visuals and CGI get a thumbs up. And 6 is rewatchability. Haunted Mansion is 2 hours and 5 minutes long, and I have to be completely honest with you, from start to finish, it was absolutely miserable to sit through. There were multiple times where I contemplated just walking out, not doing a review of this movie because it was that miserable, and I honestly wanted to see if there was any redeemable part of this movie that would have made the journey worth it. And honestly, I don't think there was. The bloated runtime of this movie makes it that much worse to sit through, especially when it wasn't funny. I didn't expect this to be a movie that I'd say this about, but I hope I never have to watch it again. But just remember, I watch these things so you don't have to. For me, rewatchability gets a huge thumbs down. With all these areas considered, I have to give Haunted Mansion a 3 out of 10. This movie had decent visuals, and its absolutely golden moments came from Lakeith Stanfield's acting in moments where his character was being developed and you feel things emotionally, and it was done in a very effective way. Everything else about this movie was pretty terrible. The acting was bland, the script was absolutely terrible, the storytelling was bloated and distracted, the character development was pretty much non-existent, and most of all, the movie was not funny. Disney has been on a terrible streak lately with its content, and you can just throw this one on the pile. So with all that in mind, Haunted Mansion is not a movie that you should waste your time or money going to see. This movie should have been released straight to Disney Plus, and it's not even worth watching then. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry for the doozy. But if you've seen Haunted Mansion, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.